When I close my eyes, I can almost see it. When I take a breath, you fill up my lungs. And if my mind worked backwards, it's for a...
Welcome everybody to a very special update. Now, we are doing this because something very important has just happened and we need to get it out. We don't want to wait until Friday's show, so...
Yeah, we'll have massive updates as well on Friday, but let's just get right into it. So, massive thing happened in England.
Manchester.
It's one of the first times I've seen this happen. The Chinese government left the consulate, grabbed a protester, brought them inside, effectively kidnapping them,
And beat them
bringing
up.
them on Chinese soil to beat them up. Because if they do it on Chinese soil, they have diplomatic immunity.
Yeah, well, the UK police actually had to rescue the protester that was dragged into the consulate. So we're going to show you the footage. We're going to talk about it. Let's get right into it.
嗰啲大陸佬走出嚟咁啊，燒毀我哋啲物品啦。跟住中途咧就我哋 stop 佢哋嘅時候咧，咁啊俾佢扯入去，咁啊拳打腳踢，係啦。咁啊後尾就係有
我不了解你提到的有关的情况。中国驻英使领馆一贯遵守驻在国法律，我们也希望英方按照《维也纳外交关系公约》和《维也纳领事关系公约》的规定，为中国驻英使领馆正常履职提供便利。
Okay, now here's the big deal with all of this nonsense, okay? First of all, in the UK, you have freedom of speech, okay? You're allowed to go and put up a banner and protest.
What
What
Why
happened?
don't you show that picture?
Yeah, let's actually go back. The thing is, they put up an insulting picture. Okay, they put up a picture here of Xi Jinping, which of course is completely unacceptable to the Chinese government and the Chinese staff. For them, it's like blasphemy. Okay, you can't do that. In China, you can't do that. You will be arrested. You will get detained.
Your life's over.
Yeah, if you put something like that in the road somewhere, you're over. So, of course, these Hong Kong protesters, peacefully protesting, put this up. And so here come the consulate officials in riot gear to come tear it down.
Yeah.
Which you can't do because that's destruction of property and, you know, it's against the law in the UK. But they did. They tore down the signs and they dragged the signs inside. And that's when the protesters tried to stop them from stealing their property. Because that is theft as well.
It is, yeah.
You can't just steal stuff.
No.
And as they were like holding on, they got dragged in, and then the consular staff dragged one of the guys in and started beating him up, and you know the UK police actually had to rescue him out and all that. So you saw what happened in the footage there, but it's ridiculous that they're allowed to get away with this.
This is like a massive slap in the face to all diplomacy. And really what it shows now is that China has gotten to a point where it's not adhering to international law anymore, because what's more important than their gentle image is to protect the face of their dear leader.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to Kim Jong-un levels of worship, Mao Zedong levels of worship. And it's gotten to the point where anything that anything that involves shaming the great leader of Xi Jinping supersedes really any sort of goals that they have. Because what this does is really just shows the world what their true intentions are.
Correct.
They're willing to kidnap people on UK soil, legally protesting.
Yes.
And then physically assault them.
You
harm
know,
them.
the worst part about this is not that you've got the thuggish staff
Yeah.
inside the consulate, but the actual consul general himself,
Yes.
who you can see, if you take a look at this picture that we're putting up on the screen right now,
Yeah.
you can see him. He's on the left. He's the guy wearing the hat and the scarf.
Yes.
He's the consul general, and the consul general is pulling the guy's hair. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is just unheard of.
I love how the foreign ministry afterwards says, hey, I don't know about what happened there, but everything's cool. Just like resume activities. You better not do anything against the conventions that basically allow diplomatic immunity.
Sure.
He's basically saying, yes, go ahead. Keep kidnapping and beating people, because what we do in China is more important than what you believe.
Now, when this first came out, of course, it shocked a lot of people. Because you wouldn't expect this kind of daylight kidnapping and thuggery and assault to happen, especially not the consul general himself being involved in the UK. Yeah. But you had a bunch of tankies and CCP supporters were trying to say that the protesters rushed the embassy and were trying to get in.
They do this though. They
Yeah.
do this. Yeah, explain what they said.
Well, they said that the protesters tried to rush the embassy
Sure.
and go in, and the embassy staff were defending themselves. Give me a break. Do you think
They're beating one
you,
guy.
you think
inside.
that like one or two Hong Kong protesters are going to try to rush the embassy for what reason?
They don't want to be on that soil.
You get onto that soil, you're on Chinese sovereign
Yeah.
soil, you'll get arrested. They don't want to be
No,
in the embassy.
no.
They don't want to be anywhere
That's
near
why they're
it.
doing
They
it outside of
Yes,
it.
they want to be outside because when you're outside the embassy, you are on UK soil.
The thing that bothers me about that is that these people that are defending the CCP or working for the CCP, these tankies and stuff that make things up like this, it's clear from the footage, it's clear from the statements, it's clear from the police, it's clear from everything that you can see what's happening. What these people are doing is running disinformation.
Yes.
And they do this on purpose. They know that's not what happened.
No.
They absolutely know. We've seen them do this. They'll say, look at that guy's patch. The characters are wrong. See,
Sure.
that's a CIA plant. That's not really Chinese. And they photoshopped it.
Yeah, they Photoshop
Right?
it themselves. Yeah.
They know what they're doing. They
Yeah.
know that because it's in their kind of doctrine. It's kind of in this idea that you're allowed to lie as long as it furthers the purpose.
Correct.
And if you can misdirect enough people that didn't look into it, maybe didn't watch the footage, then you've achieved something.
Correct.
You've sown seeds of doubt in people's heads, right? And that's what we hate about misinformation and disinformation. It's made not to like necessarily just confuse you. It's made to throw you off the scent so you don't look into it.
I mean, if you look at this picture, it's very clear to see the consul general on the left pulling the guy's hair, assaulting a protester. You've got another consul staff gouging the guy's face. You can see that's where he got his injuries from that you see when he's interviewed. You know, he's bleeding in his face because the guy's been gouged on the face. This guy had to be rescued by the UK police and physically dragged out of the consulate. Okay, he did not want to be in there.
No.
All right, it's clear as day. There's no two ways about this. And you can see from all the different camera angles we've just shown you that this is just a whole bunch of nonsense. And there's no excuse. Honestly, the UK should do something about this. And
Oh, it's necessary.
at least, at the very least, the staff that were involved in this assault of somebody on UK sovereign soil, they should be deported. Told to leave.
Criminally charged.
Yeah, obviously, if
It's a
that's
crime.
possible. Yeah, you can't assault. Well, you can't destroy willful destruction of property. You can't destroy people's signs.
No.
You can't steal them. That's
Can't punch
theft.
them in the face either.
No, exactly. And you can't drag them. You can't do an international kidnapping in broad
I mean,
daylight.
it's just crazy.
Yeah,
You know?
it just shows you flagrant disregard for local laws.
I think it's really worrying because of how unhinged it's become. And I say unhinged, but it's actually the wrong word. It's state-sponsored unhinged,
Yeah.
right? They want people to do this. Nobody here is going to get punished in China for this. They're being rewarded for this.
Well, I mean, for those of you who are wondering about those police stations we talked about a few episodes ago, those sort of special police operation centers they've opened all around the world. Well, now you can see that this is the attitude they have.
Yeah.
Of course, those police stations were operating. Of course, they used them to coerce people to go home. Of course, they used them to intimidate the local Chinese communities. And you can see just how they, in broad daylight like this, break the law. Imagine what they do behind doors in those dubious little offices.
Yes.
You know, and Chinese restaurants and various other little businesses they're running out of.
Yeah.
The CCP has to be stopped. You know, this absolute disregard for the law that they have. They have to be brought into line. There have to be repercussions. Otherwise, they will continue to do this.
Yes.
And anyone who is Chinese diaspora, or if they're a dissident, or if they're a protester, if they're Hong Konger, doesn't matter, a Taiwanese person, anyone will feel unsafe in the UK. Because if nothing is done, it sets a precedent.
Yeah.
That means that, well, hey, if the Chinese government wants to beat me up and kidnap me in
What's the
broad
next
daylight, they could do it, you know?
What's the next step?
Yeah,
You know what
exactly.
I mean?
Can they just go and grab me from my house?
Yeah. Yes.
Can they grab me from the street?
why is this any different, though? Just because of the proximity? They grab someone from the street. Why does it matter if it's 5 miles away?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, how do we know that's not happening? They just grab people, put them in a car, and
We
drive them into the
absolutely
consulate.
don't know that.
It
We don't
probably
know
is
that.
happening.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's hope that there's some proper repercussions to this.
Yeah, there better be. Anyway, next in line, we're going to talk about the 20th Party Congress. 20th Party Congress is basically when the Chinese government gets in front of everyone and says, this is what we're going to do. This is who's got what job. And the reason that it's so concerning this time is it's unprecedented. It's the first time that Xi Jinping or any leader of China since Chairman Mao is going to get a third term. He abolished the term limits.
Yeah.
That's dictator status already.
Correct.
And there's a massive long speech here. It went on for 2 hours, and it's going to take a week to get through. But
It was actually 3.5 hours.
3.5 hours, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the monologue.
I guess I mean the meat of it.
Oh, right.
Without formalities and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Anyway, that's typical CCP monologue.
Yeah.
But the important takeaways, I got 4 of them for you.
Yes.
There's 4 important takeaways.
And remember, this is still ongoing, by the way. This is
that's
a week.
what I said. It's going to take a week.
It is a week-long thing, but the opening speeches are probably going to be the most important.
Opening and closing.
So anyway, let's go over these 4 points, the steps. Yeah.
This is the
I'll get us out of
steps outside of the hall. And I just wanted to show people what the security looked like here.
Sure.
That was just sheer military presence. This is not an old photo. They're wearing masks.
Yes.
This was what it looked like outside, and it's crazy. This is the amount of, like, is someone going to slip through that?
Look, I mean, the last time they had one of these meetings, people weren't allowed to open their windows and curtains. They had to keep them all closed, like living in
that
Beijing.
serious.
Yeah, this time around, well, you know, they've been doing all sorts of lockdowns and reasons for people not to be allowed out, and they're doing their usual thing. Every time there's a big government thing, they really clamp down. My friends living in Beijing, our friends actually got visited last time they had a thing. Remember, because they owned a drone.
They owned
because they owned a drone, and it was because when you buy a drone, when you buy a drone in China, you have to register. Okay, you have to register if you're in another country, usually with the FAA or something. Yeah. There is a thing, but when you buy a drone, you register with your passport, your address, and all that stuff. So just because they owned a drone, the police came to investigate them in their house. They weren't using the drone. They didn't use the drone. They hadn't used it for ages, but they had like all the cops come knock on their door and go through all their stuff and do all sorts of nonsense.
Yeah, they weren't caught like in the act. Like
no. This was just like, there's a list of people who own drones. Let's go harass them and make sure that they're...
It was late at night, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course, always. So, you know, they take extra steps, and they've been taking super extra steps, which is why it's so outstanding that Bannerman managed to get his protest out there.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, of course, the usual tankies and so on are trying to call the CIA color revolution again. I mean, come on, guys. Seriously?
Yeah.
Anyway,
so what do we got here? Well, we had the Congress starts, and we had, you know, the typical formalities. You had your hammers and sickles, you had your toasts, you had your tea pouring with all the ladies in line. Yeah, pouring for the dignitaries. You had people join in through remote means because of COVID, right? Mm-hmm. I thought this was hilarious because this was going around on the Chinese internet, and then obviously it was pulled.
Yeah,
that's what your phone would have looked like when you pulled this up.
Exactly, dude. Yeah, everything when it comes to the Chinese government looks like this. You just get blasted in Zhongguo Hong, as they call it.
Hong, yeah. So anyway, as I talk about these points, this is the actual speech in the background. Yeah. First part of the speech, very important part, was Xi Jinping has declared that he will not back down from zero COVID. Zero COVID in that the policy, no COVID is allowed in China, no matter what draconian lockdowns. Mm-hmm. I believe some of the context was, it doesn't matter if a few thousand people are unhappy as long as the majority doesn't die and is safe and stuff, right?
You know, he's tried to spin this, that this whole zero COVID thing proves that he cares more about people's lives than he does about anything else. Yeah. That's what they're trying to spin.
Yes.
But what he doesn't, he obviously does know, but what most people that believe him don't realize is that because of these lockdowns, countless people have lost their lives. Yeah. Not only lost their livelihoods, but lost their lives too. It's a terrible situation. It's caused chaos. It's caused financial ruin for countless families. Yes. It's plunged people into poverty. Yes. It's destroyed entire sectors of the economy. Yeah. You know, businesses like restaurants and malls and, you know, places where you go, brick and mortar businesses have all been affected greatly. Yeah. Most of them had to shut down. Yes. It's done terrible, terrible things. But he's like, oh, no, I care about people's lives. Yeah. Actually, he doesn't. No. Not at all.
So
he cares
this-
about his control.
Yeah, so this is not going to slow down, and why bother, right? This is the best gift that the CCP could ask for, and that's full ultimate control of the country indefinitely, right?
Yeah.
They already had that, but now it's much more easy. It's much easier to do, and now you have an excuse for it. Hey, your QR code turned red, right? Shut down the whole area.
Yeah.
And they do this now when there's protests or there's unrest. Anytime there's any inkling of unrest, people's codes go red, and like, oh, there's a COVID case here. Round them up. The dabai, the big people dressed in the hazmat suits, round them up and throw them in the camps. Right?
Well, this is an interesting thing because a foreigner that I was talking to who's currently in China, his code suddenly turned red for no reason. He hadn't had contact with anyone or anything. It turned red.
Yeah.
So he was freaked out and he didn't know why it turned red. And, usually if it turns red, they come and take you to a quarantine camp or whatever. But then later in the day, it turned green again.
Huh.
So I think that they probably had a little thing. They're like, quickly lock down all the foreigners or lock down a certain group of people or a certain area.
Yeah.
And it goes red. Just because if your code goes red, you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to leave your building. You're not allowed to go into a shopping mall. You can't use public transport, right? You can't do anything. So I suspect that his code turned red for those number of hours. There's a number of hours turned red because there was something going on. They were like, quickly, just make everyone red so that nobody goes out to see this thing or whatever. And I suspect they'll be doing that kind of thing in the future.
Point number 2 is he gave lip service to the whole reform and opening thing. You know about reform and opening from the second leader of China, Deng Xiaoping. It was like kind of anti-Mao principles. It's like, let's try this capitalism thing. Let's get along with the rest of the world and let's get rich first, right?
Sure.
He paid lip service to it, even though that's what made China what it is today under the Chinese government. And he said, yeah, let's continue this reform and opening thing. But really the economy took a backseat to all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really showing the ambition is social stability and ultimate CCP control is much more important than the success of the Chinese people.
Correct.
And I've been talking to some people in China. I'm telling you, very pro-CCP, very nationalist people now terrified that this is the Cultural Revolution 2.0.
Yeah.
And this is without Western influence. This is without them looking up stuff on a VPN. This is what people are talking about in China amongst themselves right now.
Yeah.
And it was after this that this really exacerbated that second point. And a principle that really proves this is that China indefinitely is not reporting GDP numbers anymore.
Yeah,
Now,
they decided to stop reporting them.
Yeah, they were made up anyway.
Yeah.
It's usually been about double what they've said. And dictatorships do this. But the fact that they're not going to be reporting
You mean it's
them,
been half of what they said?
sorry. They've reported double.
They're like, we're
what it's
earning
actually
like
been.
whatever billion,
Yeah.
like 10 billion. Meanwhile, it's more like 3.
3, yeah.
Yeah.
So indefinitely they won't be reporting that, and that's a huge cause of concern for
Why would you not
locals in
report
China.
it? Why would you not report
I
it?
wonder.
Because it's not what you want it to be. And you can't keep lying. You see, the problem is the people that are very pro-CCP in China that you and I know, the reason they're very pro-CCP is because they made a lot of money under the CCP. Correct. Those are the people that really are pro-CCP.
Yep.
The poor people that are just trudging along, they're nationalists because they've been taught that in school and
It's
they have to.
brainwashing, but it's
they're,
whatever.
they have very little power to do anything anyway. The people that
They know that.
Yeah, the people that are pro-CCP are usually people in government positions or people that have factories or people that have big businesses, people that have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they love the Chinese government because they've been able to make all of this money because of this system that operates. And it operates through corruption and connections and things like that. And those are the people we're talking about now that are really starting to worry.
Yeah.
Because Xi Jinping might say, oh, let's continue to reform and open up. But all he's done during his leadership is to deform and close up.
Just railroad the economy and close down the country.
Yeah, he's gone backwards. The whole idea that Deng Xiaoping had to open up and allow capitalism and stuff like that and connect to the Western world and, be friends and let's invest and let's work
To a
together.
certain extent, yeah.
Yeah, obviously. That's now been on the back pedal for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's why we're seeing things close down. That's why we're seeing the economy take a tank. And that's why we're seeing a very unfriendly situation between the West and China. It's because of the harsh behavior of the Chinese Communist Party, the forced transfer of IP, for instance, the constant smacking with a stick and only having a fake carrot. We'll give
Yeah.
you access to our market if you do this. Oh, you did that? Whack. You know what? You're not going to get the carrot anyway. That kind of thing. It's been a bad situation. A lot of companies have lost out. Hollywood and various other places have capitulated to China, and it's only been to their detriment. We've seen it, NBA, all of this. We've seen the bad stuff happen, and it's going backwards.
Yeah, for sure. The third point was Taiwan will be taken, will be reunified. And I say reunify from their terms.
It was never unified.
It was never unified to begin with. The Chinese government under the CCP has never had control over Taiwan.
Never.
And that will happen either peacefully or by force. This is something you'll hear all the time.
They say it all the time.
However, it will be his legacy to be the one that does that. He's pretty much made it clear that it's going to be him that takes back Taiwan.
Yeah, and that's the dangerous thing, is because he wants to prove a point,
Yeah. Especially as a backup, because if the zero COVID thing, which is not working out, if it fails in the public eye, which it's not allowed to fail in the public eye.
No, you're not allowed to question it if you're in China. No.
But if it does ultimately fail in the public eye, the Taiwan thing would be a real tie-together factor to bring his leadership back into a positive light. Because they say, at least we took back Taiwan.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And the last thing, perhaps the most important thing that I'm not seeing anyone focus on, it is the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's amplifying China's global ambitions.
Right.
So there was a famous quote from Deng Xiaoping, second leader of China, to bring him back. He said, basically China is powerful, but we can't show our power yet.
Yeah. Hide your strength.
Hide your strength.
Bide your time.
Bide your time. And when you get to a point, eventually you will be able to control the world. We'll put China back in a position of emperor status, kind of like people will come and kowtow to us again.
Sure.
And I don't think he ever intended for it to happen now, because that time is not yet.
No, that's the thing. China has not reached that point yet.
But Xi Jinping has said it has. And that was a huge part of the speech, was China's already achieved middle income, already achieved moderate prosperity, as they call it, middle income with Chinese characteristics.
Sure.
And also has eradicated poverty. So when you tick those boxes, it's time now for China to be the number one power. Militarily, economically, China is going to be the world superpower. Yeah. And that's really what came through in the speech. And that's the most worrying thing, is because what it means is China's global influence operations are increasing and supported by the top leadership, so that China can overtake and control countries around the world.
Yeah. It's awful.
Yeah.
Can I also just say that Xi Jinping is a cultural appropriator? How dare he wear a Western suit with a tie? That's, I didn't give you permission to steal my culture. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Just kidding. But it is kind of ridiculous how they're so, he is so Han-centric and so China-centric. You'd expect him to wear something more traditionally Chinese.
The Chinese government's a complete copy of
The
Western
Soviet
ideology.
Yeah, it's true, Karl Marx. Anyway, now, because of his whole, like we were talking about earlier, this aggressive stance towards the West and closing up and all of this other nonsense, has had another knock-on effect, which is this whole chip ban that you've been hearing about.
Yeah.
And this is something very important we need to talk about. I'll put a picture of the chips in the background.
Yes.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, I actually made a video about this on my channel, but microprocessors and computer chips are incredibly complicated and difficult to make.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure everybody knows that,
Yes.
because you can't make it in your backyard.
No,
Okay,
no.
But the fact of the matter is that it takes incredibly expensive research and development.
Yeah.
In America, we've seen the chip market the chip technology grow from sort of the late 60s all the way up until now, and it's been leaps and bounds. It's incredible what can be done these days. The thing is, China's actually incapable of making its own chips.
Yeah.
And that's because it lacks the expertise and it lacks the ability to create new chips.
You wouldn't think that if you looked at Chinese propaganda or what they export, but they can't make chips.
Just like they can't make AI.
Yeah.
I am AI, Sarah AI.
Sarah, and this is really the future of what's to come. And so I'm just going to give you a bit of a demonstration. Hi Sarah, how old are you?
I'm 26 years old.
You're 26 years old, that's it, you look younger.
Yes, younger and beautiful. Yes, younger and beautiful.
But quite seriously, you have a situation where China is still reliant on the rest of the world for the chips that it uses in all the products. Now, we know China makes everything. It's the It's kind of the global factory, right? Everything kind of electronic and so on gets made in China, but it's more like it's assembled in China.
Yeah.
Okay. They still need to import the chips.
Yes.
Now, of course, China's very good at reverse engineering and forced IP transfer. We saw the situation with ARM in China, where basically the Chinese manager took over and stole the ARM technology and everything and called it XPS or something. So China does have access to medium, what would you call it, like medium quality chips, you know?
Sure.
So they're not the most complicated type.
No.
But they still have access to the medium quality. And the lower quality chips, the very sort of basic chips, they can manufacture themselves, no problem.
Sure.
But it's specialized machinery in order to make and maintain these production lines that they can no longer get their hands on.
Yeah, so this whole ban covers all that stuff.
Yeah.
And when you say they have access or they can make medium level chips, the problem with that is that that's right now.
Yes.
Chips continue to progress. And when you stop that influx of chips and chip technology and manufacturing equipment now, that means the future's dead.
Sure.
We're talking about not future done now. We're talking about the near future's done.
Sure.
Right? The chips need to continue progressing. So there was a lot of speculation in the Chinese government. Hey, when Biden, or I should just say the U.S. government, throws this big chip ban onto China, are the companies actually going to be incentivized to move? Are they going to listen to this?
Yeah.
And nearly 100% of the companies have packed up immediately, overnight, and left China.
Well, you know, so many of them have been burned.
Yes.
Because what's happened is that they've been setting up their factories and so on in China. They've been sending over their expertise, sending over their intellectual property. And what's been happening is a lot of the times it's stolen and transferred. And, you know, like their factory will be producing their chips, but it will also be the corrupt managers will be producing chips for their cousin or something, and he sells it under a different brand. And also market share, we found that the Chinese companies will then sell your own product back to your own market at an undercut price because they didn't have to pay for research and development, any of that kind of stuff, so they can undercut your price big time. And it really hurts a lot of these companies.
Yeah.
So many companies have been burned, and so I can understand why they've decided to take this seriously.
Yeah, well, yeah, they had to.
I mean, but on top of that, they're also motivated to no longer deal with this.
They've already been hurt.
It's a very hostile environment to do business in China. Everyone's trying to swindle you and undercut you.
Yes.
And the local governments and police and so on will strong-arm you, and there are bribes involved and all sorts of things. So you're not dealing with a level-headed, stable situation there.
No. So the U.S. has the most potential damage to China. I mean, this really ruins the economic future of China in the tech sphere. And the real focus of the Xi Jinping government was to focus on the tech stuff and to nationalize jobs and bring back the kind of, not iron rice bowl, but full government control over companies.
Yeah.
And that's really just destroyed that entire goal.
Yeah.
Especially because you can't rely on other big juggernaut countries to not follow the U.S. The Netherlands, huge in chips. Japan, massive.
Sure.
Right? Just followed the U.S. ban.
That's great news.
And Korea and Taiwan are the next big ones. And you know we can't sit here and assume that they're going to take China's side in this.
Sure.
Let's be totally honest. It would make a lot more sense to follow the U.S. lead.
Sure.
So we're looking at a really crazy situation where China's space program, their surveillance, all this kind of stuff, that really relies on these chips to be progressing, and then they can get their hands on them.
Yeah.
They're not going to have access to it. They're going to have to buy stuff, basically, and then basically take the chips out of a prefabbed item.
Yeah.
And that's cost prohibitive. I mean, that's going to slow the ever-living crap out of China's development.
Well, yeah, you know that they're going to find ways around this by setting up like false companies in Brazil or something. And, you know, they purchase it and ship it to China.
It's a Band-Aid, though.
Yeah.
Because this is it's going to stifle it in the immediate term, and then from now on, it's going to be much more difficult.
That's the point. That it's going to slow things down.
Yeah, big time.
Okay, definitely slow things down. But it won't. You cannot stop them because they have so many inroads everywhere.
Sure, but again, this is going to be I think a progressive ban. It's going to take time to take root, and basically countries will have to either follow suit or get out.
Yeah,
right?
makes sense.
And I think when it comes to chips and stuff, this isn't oil anymore. This is the real future of the world.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to make your bed and sleep in it. Either you choose China or you don't, and China doesn't have the chips right now. It's a very easy choice to make for a lot of these places.
Very true.
So hope you guys like that update. We will see you on Friday, obviously. And we have a show that we'll see you today if you're watching right now.
Yeah.
Shaban Ho.
Yeah, we have our Shaban Ho. And before I tell you about that, remember, all of the topics that we've spoken about today are still developing.
Yes.
Especially the thing in the UK. We can't wait to see the official response to
Yes.
that, because we need to see an official response. The whole party congress is still underway. It's not finished yet, so there could be some new developments there.
Sure.
And well, the chip ban thing is constantly progressing too. So we'll be giving you some real updates on Friday when we have our main show. So we can't wait to see you for the live show on Friday. And yes, if you are part of the Shaban Ho tier, which you can get to if you go to patreon.com/ADV podcasts, you'll be able to join us in a couple of hours where we have our special VIP show. And we got a very interesting topic for you today. We're talking about some crazy bathroom stories in China.
But not only that, you don't have to join us live. If you join the tier on the Patreon, then you can actually watch all the episodes that we've done. You don't have to watch them live. You can watch them, after the fact. That's fine too. And we appreciate everyone supporting us there and looking forward to hanging out with you there.
Yeah. Anyway, until next time, you know the drill. As always, stay awesome.